As fans debate Ben Affleck's portrayal of the Batman, a former Batman does what he can to stay relevant. Even if his version is the least liked, we can still appreciate the efforts of George Clooney as he plays a TV host. At least in this case, his credit card does not look out of place. Money Monster. Speaking as a fan of Jodie Foster as a director, she did a good job. The story follows financial TV host Lee Gates and his producer Patty. Their show Money Monster advises people on what stocks to buy and sell. After Gates promotes a high-tech stock that crashes, he is held hostage on live TV by an irate investor, Kyle Budwell. Kyle had invested everything into that stock and now has nothing. He wants answers and refuses to let Gates go until he gets one. The answer to your burning question is I have seen 2 other of Jodie Foster's directing projects, The Beaver and her episode of House of Cards. I thought both were very well done, and while I do miss her in front of the camera, I am very happy that she is directing. Compared to The Beaver, Money Monster is less emotional. It's more like a card game. And for the sake of argument, we'll say that the king is George Clooney, and the Joker is Jack O'Connell. And if you're playing war, for instance, you put the Joker aside. But in this game of war, the Joker is in play, and he's after the king. It is a peculiar predicament, because the Joker has value. The Joker is not useless. Kyle is not useless. But in this movie, there is a twist to the dynamic. The king does not want to dominate the Joker. He, in fact, wants to... Come on. He wants to help him. It is quite the debacle, but what really worked for me was Kyle's goal. It is not stupid, it is not complex, and it doesn't make him unlikable. The predicament he gets himself into is not smart, but we get the inkling fairly early on that he is aware of and okay with the idea that he could die. And that mindset gave this movie a tone that made me realize about halfway through that I was rooting for both Lee and Kyle, and that's because they are both victims. The kicker is, it did not dawn on me they were both victims until days after I saw this, and I think that's because the way Foster directed this, she didn't take sides. Her vision is not bash you over the head stylistic or preachy. Every scene is shot with the mentality of which angles are the most appropriate for the story, the emotion, the character, and that generates a pacing that never really speeds up, but also never slows to a halt. For the cast, they are not working with the most awe-inspiring script, but they still did their job, and among the lot, Julia Roberts impressed me the most. I also enjoyed Jack O'Connell in his role. He is getting better with every movie, and his performance in this movie projects a very relatable frustration. George Clooney, the biggest star in this movie, has never been one of my personal favorite actors, but he is the star of one of my favorite movies. And when I look at that movie, and then look at this movie, the striking thing about Clooney is that he is not one to be typecast. He may be a star, he is a star, but he's not one to shy away from projecting a vulnerable image, and I admire that. My favorite part is when Julia Roberts is talking with Diane Lester. This is during a very important story moment, and she's basically trying to talk sense into her because she's not cooperating. And it may sound really simple, but I love the scene because it's a very tight scene and with exceptional acting. My notes for improvement begin with 2 story choices. Number 1, Kyle's entrance. Using his job and stealth skills, Kyle is able to creep into the broadcasting room and take over. It is plausible, but it's not nearly as jarring and tense as it could have been. Number 2, Kyle's girlfriend. At one point, the authorities get Kyle's girl to talk to him on video. and try and talk sense into him. Now, on the one hand, I can buy that, they would do that, get a personal connection to try and help Kyle realize his very poor choice. But given how she is written into the story, I do not feel like she was necessary. Let's now finish up with one last note, this one for plausibility. Eventually, Lee guides Kyle out of the building and into the streets, where it is quite busy. Now, as a viewer, it was refreshing to be outside with these characters, but realistically, I doubt very much that Kyle would have been let out of the building. Dramatically, yes, it's intense, but realistically, it makes no sense. My overall feeling on this movie is that I doubt it'll be on my brain in the near future, but solid filmmaking with good actors is always worth a watch in my book. I give Money Monster 3.5 out of 5 stars. Thank you very much for your time. Now go be productive and watch a movie.